from Heritage Mom. Such a treat. Can't wait for you guys to join us today. I'm going to give you guys a little minute to jump on. Today we are going to be talking about kids and the start of the school year, how to integrate grace, curiosity, and a lot of fun as you gear up and get your minds ready for another school year. No matter how old your kids are, whether they're littles or they're teens, this is for you. So I'm going to go on over and invite our amazing guests. We're super excited. Here we go. Guys, we're so lucky. Hey, Amber, we did it.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I always feel so successful when we all get together on lives.
Tell me about it. I know it's always nerve-wracking. Like, is this gonna work? I hope it works. So, well, it's great to be on with you.
It's so great to have you. We are super fans, and so we've been really pumped to have you and for our StoryMaker fans to know you and all the wonderful things that you're doing for kids, and it's just such an honor. So we're super pumped.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, Amber, before we get started, you know, we always have some fun Q&As, but I think it'd be great if you could just share a little bit about yourself and who's Heritage Mom. We want to know.
Wonderful. Well, as you said, I'm Amber O'Neal Johnston, and my husband Scott and I live out in Atlanta, Georgia. We have 4 kiddos, and we're in the middle of birthday season, but soon enough they will be 14 in 9th grade, 12 in 7th grade, 10 in 5th grade, and an almost 8-year-old in 2nd grade. We homeschool them, and they've been homeschooled from the beginning, so that's a big part of our lives. And locally, I run a nonprofit homeschool support group in my local area, and then nationally, I write books, write articles, and I speak and provide homeschooling lesson plans and curricula. And most of my platform is related to showing all children, the beauty of diverse culture.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why did you guys decide to homeschool?
It's so funny. We have so many reasons now, but they're not at all the same as like why we first got started. So in the very beginning, it was because our oldest had a late birthday, and my husband was like, "Hey, I heard that if we homeschool, we can start her in school, and then eventually we'll transfer her, and after a couple of years, and they'll be fine with it. They won't say she has to be in the lower grade." And it's so silly now because I'm just like, oh my gosh, she was fine where she was, but what she was playing with or hanging out with her days. But that's actually what got us started. And we ended up, I didn't want to do it. It was Scott's idea, and I was very resistant. And he said, well, will you just try it for a year? And if you don't like it, I'll never ask you again. I was like, deal.
Yeah.
And
that's a great deal.
It's a great deal. Yeah.
That's good
so by the
marriage advice.
It is, right? Like, just it's a way to compromise when there is no compromise. You can't like half homeschool, right?
No.
Yeah. So at the end of that year, we checked in with each other, and I was sheepishly like, oh my gosh, I love it. So we just kept going.
That's awesome. So Amber, were you a teacher, or did you feel equipped to jump in?
No, not.
How was that for you?
No, I was working before kids in corporate America and like marketing. Okay. So I had no background in education. Now, both of my parents were public school principals. So I grew up with educators and all of their friends and everything. I was surrounded by educators. But I wasn't specially trained for that. I always say my only training is just knowing my children better than anyone else.
That's right. I mean, we talk a lot about that at StoryMakers, being curious and really like getting in there to discover who your kids are. And then that sort of opens the doors for all of the, all the things that you may find challenging. So yeah. That's so great. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. We have some great questions, or I'm curious about these questions. And you jumped right into homeschooling. how has that changed over time? Like after getting to know your kids, like do you integrate like curiosity, or are you guys really strict about what you're doing with your curriculum? How's that workflow go?
It's interesting because, like I said, we started almost from a point of wanting to accelerate our oldest. Like, she can go further, faster, harder if we have her at home. And then during that first year, since I really had no idea what I was doing, I spent a lot of time researching and reading like educational theory and from all variety of people. I didn't want to just go down one path. And the interesting thing is that all the books that I read, these, experts and people who had done all this research, later on in the older years, they disagreed about the best way to educate a child. But they all agreed in the younger years. Like they just were repeating each other after it. And what it said was plenty of time to play and be curious and investigate, lots of time outside, stories and imaginative play and exploration. And I thought, okay, this is something I can really believe in, because if all of these people who otherwise disagree about everything else, all their research and all their experience points back to this being the right thing in early childhood, I'm going to go with that. And so it's ironic because in the beginning we started to be hardcore academic, accelerated, whatever. But by the end of that year, I recognized that I wanted to do something different. And so my funny story is that at the end of her first year, I said, Nina, guess what? You finished kindergarten. And she said, yay. And I said, now you finished kindergarten A and you get to do kindergarten B. And she was like, yay. And so that's actually, we ended up doing years of kindergarten, and that's how I slowed our trajectory down to give her more time to be expansive and build breadth rather than just going straight up. So that's been an important thing for us all along.
That's awesome. I mean, we love the idea of play and imagination around here for sure. So how have you seen play help the process of like committing information, learning to like the heart of your kids? Mm-hmm. Have you seen that as, I mean, we really believe strongly in play, but have you seen that in real life in your own experience?
I think it helps them own what they're learning. So, I mean, I grew up, old school memorization at school and at church, rote memorization with consequences for not getting it. And I did learn it, but I didn't feel it, right? These weren't things that I thought about or contemplated in my free time when I wasn't in a setting where I was expected to do that. The difference I've seen with my children is that with our style of learning and the way that we're approaching education, they never really stop. They don't say like, oh, I'm done learning, so now I'm going to go have fun. They're using what they're talking about and learning about in their imaginative play. That's what they're investigating later. Those are the rabbit holes they're going down. Those are the conversations we have around the table. And so it's kind of like, I think, preparing them to be lifelong learners, to do something in a way that it's like any of us as adults. When we want to learn something new, if I want to start a garden, right, I'm going to go learn about it, and I'm going to go hang out with other gardeners, and I'm going to go to the farmers market. I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to just sit there and feel like, this is such a drag. I got to learn it. Yeah. So I think that's, to me, it's they remember more about what they're learning when they approach it in the way that we're approaching it.
That's so cool. Yeah. Do you feel like it's helps with integration?
Well, definitely. Yeah. It helps with integrating the ideas and concepts into the rest of our lives. So it's like, it's just a major blending. I would say, like, we don't have like Sunday morning and then and then school and then home life, and it's just kind of all there together. The things that we learn in one space are related to the things that we learn in other spaces, and I think that it makes for interesting learning. And but my kids are still kids. I think that's important to say. So it's not like they are always enthusiastic, like, oh my gosh, let's read this book all picked out. Yeah. But I hope that I'm, picking things that they enjoy most of the time. And the other times, sometimes you gotta suck it up and take a hit
Yeah.
on the family.
Yeah, I think that's important to mention, right? Like even with StoryMakers and curriculum, and there are bits that are not always like, kids are kids, right? They're humans, we're human, and there are certain times where like, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather do this, but we kind of help them, draw them forward. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And then how have you kind of seen, I'm just so curious about this, like the social emotional component of like integrating homeschool, a learning, and your approach. Like, have you seen? What do you think from your own experience in comparison to what you're watching them as they're learning?
I think part of it for us is that we don't have to as much overtly say, okay, in this situation, you do this, and in this situation, and let me give you the definition of compassion, and let's do a worksheet about it. It's more like comes out through story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from the stories that we're reading and from our own life experiences. So like I had a medical emergency during this school year, totally unexpected. And my kids learned so many things through that, I mean, it was just through the roof in every direction. And I would call those things out. I'm like, listen, look at the hospitality of our friends that are bringing these things to us, bringing dinner every night, or, look at the power of education and that the doctors have been able to miraculously, do these things. The Lord is working through them. And so just, I think it's more by the way than what I received, which was more academic presentation of the same information.
Yeah. So you're probably, your kids have a sense of a different kind of an awareness, especially as you like adventure together, right? Because you get to take the classroom to different parts of the, the normative experience. And so they can look out for each other, problem solve together as a group. I would imagine that you're afforded those kinds of opportunities too.
Well, definitely. And I feel like we can also hit pause very easily and just say, okay, stop. Something's happening here, particularly between my kids, the siblings. Like if someone shoots someone an ugly statement, they say something ugly, I don't just keep going. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's fine. Now turn to chapter 4. I'm like, okay, what just happened? Yeah. How are you really feeling? What did you mean to say? And, let that person react from it. And, sometimes that means I don't finish every single thing that was on the list that day. Like when I think of my goal for the children, it's beyond just memorizing a set of facts and standards. And don't get me wrong, I'm very particular and serious about their lessons. I want them to be well educated, but a part of being, kind of ministering to the whole person is that they know how to treat each other, and they know expect to be treated well as well.
Yeah, that I could imagine. That's part of what we hope for with our story makers in Sunday school, like having those moments to take like a beat between each other and being able to say like, hey, imagine, how would that make you feel? Or, just being able to have that freedom to like just stop, because those are really important learning moments. And for us to be like healthier humans and grown-ups, and to deal with each other in the workplace, it's like, hey, that wasn't super nice.
Definitely.
Are you okay?
I think it's even nice with the story makers how you have the plays with the dialogue, because I think sometimes we can give each other language, right? You can get the language from stories or from the plays that you're acting out. Like if I were ever in this situation, here's something I could say similar to this, or something I know that I wouldn't want to say or treat someone. So role playing, I think, is a really important aspect of learning. It can be.
Yeah, definitely. We love it. And so one of the things I was thinking about before we jumped on the call today, I think that so many of the things that you're putting out are so valuable. And I think as parents, we want to have a mindset going forward and be conscious as we're like hitting the new fall season. And so one of the questions I sent you over was, what would you, not recommend really, but what do you do as you prepare for the next season? How do you prepare the minds of your kids, and how do you prepare your own self as you get ready to launch into, the fresh new learning season?
Yeah. For me, one thing is, and I've learned this over the years, how important it is, and that is to enter into the new school year rested. So our local school district started school a couple weeks ago. All of my friends around me have already started school, and I mean the homeschoolers, like they've already started into their new school year. But my family, again, we had a rough school year. We traveled a lot earlier in the summer. And so August for us has been just a time to be at home, not out of town, relaxing, reading good books and enjoying one another and going swimming. And so I have to look at that. There's this feeling inside of a little panic, like when you see everyone around you moving in one direction. But I know that if we take these extra few weeks to rest, that our school year will be so much better, because my children and myself will be entered in a place of like peace and calmness, ready to learn and grow together. And if we rush into it, because I have done that before, you spend the rest of the year chasing yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great advice. I know. Yeah, we all feel that. And I think, especially as parents, you don't want to like not do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so you kind of feel like the herd is going one direction. You're like, should we be doing that? Is that what we're supposed to be doing right now? But it did make me think of Madeline Langle's this book called And It Was Good.
Okay.
And she talks about, the Sabbath and rest, and that God had to rest, or God took a rest, right? Like he created, there were so many wonderful things, and then there was rest. And I think, taking a beat and that, allowing ourselves to take that beat and to listen to our families and our own rhythms is, I think, super important to remaining connected. And sometimes when you just rush into it, you do end up having to undo any of the pain points that came with the rush.
That's exactly what I said.
It didn't end up being super valuable.
No, exactly. It's not good quality, right?
Yeah.
You're getting what you're doing it, but it's not what you had imagined it would be.
That's right. One of the questions I had sent over to Amber too is related to grace. We like to think of ourselves as a grace-forward curriculum and our approach, and imagining kids as being beloved and heirs of God's kingdom, even before they, put anything out into the world. And so, one of my questions to you is, where have you seen grace in your own parenting experience?
Oh, wow. That has been so many times. I think that it's an ongoing cycle of giving and receiving grace, and I feel like I receive it regularly from my family and others. Something I struggle with in my home is staying up too late. When the kids go to bed and even my husband's in bed, I tend to relish those hours of just solitude and silence in the house, because I am a bit introverted. And but then my family pays a price for with irritability the next day, right? Because I didn't get enough sleep. And so there have been so many times where I feel like, they have had to forgive, for my irritability or the way that I'm acting, or that, setting the tone for our home. And I have to really be mature and like go to bed on time and not make that happen. And with my children, I'm their teacher, but I'm also their mom. And so they do things that, sometimes I wish they wouldn't do. And this ability to not hold a grudge, and for maybe your teacher to let teacher Amber is holding you firm to, you're not going to be able to do this tomorrow because you didn't do this. But mom Amber, in 2 minutes later, can still hug your boo-boo. You know what I mean? Like, I am still your mom, and I always am connected with you, even if as your teacher, I am disciplining or requesting that you do something differently. So I just feel like, to me, your question, I'm just like, oh my gosh, my whole house is just like a big mush of grace.
I love
for
that.
all of us, we're all accepting and feeling blessed by the grace that we receive, as a whole. So I think it flows through everything that we do. And every family has to forgive, but when you're home together all day, every single day, there's a lot of grace poured over the house. So
yeah, it's Grace's work, and it's so formative, and that's so beautiful. I just love what you just said. Yeah, I would imagine that would be a key ingredient to the ongoing success of a homeschooling and whole integration kind of life. So exactly, and holding that truth of like that we've been given much, we've been forgiven much, and I think that shows our kids so much more about like what our relationship is like with God, more than them knowing all the facts and the details. But in those moments of like apologies between each other, I think that has such a great impact, right? For them to know that we know that we need to be forgiven too.
Oh, definitely. I think that's very important, and being able to expose that to the children. I think even in the way my husband and I interact with each other, he's also home with us all day. And so, there were times even recently where my daughter was like, Mom, she's like, you were a little snippy with Daddy. And I was like, I wanted to be like, don't correct me. But I was like,
okay, fine.
I was like, maybe so, or whatever. So when he came back in the kitchen, I was like, Sasha said I was snippy. I'm sorry. And he was like, it's fine, whatever. So I think like leaving room for not having to feel like you're the parent. You have to be perfect all the time. You can never show your children. You can never admit when you're wrong. And it doesn't always have to be this like super serious thing. Like in that moment, I was pretty playful about it, but I admitted she was right. Yeah. And she said it very respectfully, and I was like, and I let her hear me apologize to her dad. So I think that, I think there are just so many examples where we can show our children that we are not infallible, and that we also are answering to the Lord in the same way that we're asking them to do.
Totally. And I think, right, when there can be forgiveness at a micro level, then that pours out into that macro.
Oh yeah.
I think so much of our society is like we lack the ability to say we're sorry and to have forgiveness on a more societal levels, but it does start right in those small spaces, and that's what kind of pours out. They're the next generation. So yeah. If they can kind of see that model for them, that's, I think, a huge gift.
I agree.
Well, Amber, what do you have? You've written a book. You've written multiple books, correct?
I've only published one, but I'm working on others. Yeah, so work coming in the future. Yeah.
Yay! So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what you hope to like put out in the world creatively in your writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, what I'm most interested in writing about in this season are things that help parents see that it's actually not hard to include a lot of different people in your children's lives, and I mean that in the widest sense, but I also mean that very specifically, whether it's intergenerational relationships, and yes, different ethnicities, which is what I end up talking about a lot, that as well. But, even experiences with kids from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and just, I'm looking for tools and resources to share with parents, and creating those things that show them how they can live a more open-handed life with their children, and show them another way that is different than maybe what we commonly see in society today.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, are you talking about maybe like the value of kids being you mean like being, in the same room with different types of kids, and the value of that, or like
being in the same room, but also actually being in relationship with them, You know what I mean? And so I think that I'm not going to be as trite as to say all our problems would be fine if we would just all be friends. It's not that. But I think about how I might have an opinion about something. But then when I meet someone that opinion directly impacts and we become friends, often my thoughts about that topic are more intimate and I care so much more because I can tie that to my friend, this person that I love or that I care about. And so, again, it kind of comes back to I'm really huge about storytelling. So I think having our children in positions to learn other people's stories can help as they grow older, that they're not just okay with other people being around, but that they actually feel that they are in relationship and feel comfortable being in relationship with people who are similar and different. Mm-hmm. And so you can't just like read a book and be like, okay, now I got it. Those that have to be lived out. And so I feel really passionate today, I guess also because of our nation and where we are with so much fighting and just like kind of feels like racial strife and all of these things. I'm thinking to myself, what should we be doing with our children today to make this look much different tomorrow?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, I love that. Such a great word. Yeah, I mean, I think, and then it's having that place of the starting point, have like a curiosity, like a real genuine curiosity about the other person and their story, right? That does inform like empathy and understanding, and you can have different opinions and still remain like cordial and respectful, and it's like, wow, that's how they imagine this topic, or that's how they've experienced life. But being able to stay connected, because in some, I think ultimately God, right, created us to be connected to one another and to love and forgive each other. And it's hard to do that if you don't have a real curiosity about who people really genuinely are, and in their story.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think you pretty much summed it up, but that's kind of where I like to come from, the idea of like we're trying to learn each other's stories. And I think for parents, sometimes that can feel scary because it's like you have your belief system for your family culture, your family values, and it can feel scary that the idea that your child might interact anywhere with someone who doesn't have that same blueprint in every way. And I guess I feel like parenting out of fear in that way can often, a byproduct is limiting or making our children's environments very homogenous, as we try to surround ourselves with people that we feel safest with or that we feel will be most like us. And so the idea of, being very thoughtful and intentional about expanding or widening that circle and the richness that can come from it. And for me, specifically, I talk about that in terms of curricula as well. So, the books your child is reading and the videos even that they're watching, the type of art they're studying and the music or the poems that they're reading. I think every single aspect of our children's learning can be touched by this idea of expansiveness.
Totally. And, coming at it from like that fear place does limit their, it kind of cheats us all of like exposure to new and exciting expressions of art and writing and authorship and if you're only reading certain types of literature, then you miss out on a whole other world and exposure to the way other cultures and groups related to things happening in the world from wherever they were. And it's all exciting because God created all of us and we have different experiences, and it's, when we aren't afraid and we get to engage, that's such a gift. Yeah. So I love what you're doing.
Thanks.
It's so awesome.
Oh, I'm excited about it and I appreciate that.
So awesome. Well, Amber, I'm so grateful for your time with us today. Is there any nuggets that you want to leave us with before we part from our live?
Oh, well, I would just say, to take, for parents to take every opportunity they can to really lean into what their children are saying to them, and not turn away from conversations as difficult as they may be. Some are easy and lighthearted, some are hard and difficult, but to be willing to be that person that your children can talk to about anything.
So awesome. I love that. Well, if you all didn't know Amber, now you do. Check her out, follow her, and get her book. It's so awesome. And we can't wait to see what you're up to next. And thank you so much for, checking out our StoryMakers adventures. We just love to share God's story wherever we can.
Yeah, awesome. It was so great talking to you.
Thanks, Amber. Bye, everybody.